As graphics cards continue to grow in size, we are faced with a whole new set of challenges that even make the most experienced PC builders break a sweat. From having to buy a new case just to accommodate your brand new shiny GPU, to water cooling reservoirs that just won't fit because of the GPU's sheer length. Trust us, this build is not for the faint of heart. But if you're a fan of high stakes drama and a little bit of creative problem solving, you won't want to miss a single moment. IT management can be confusing. With so many networks and devices and alerts, it's easy to lose track. But with Pulseway's IT monitoring software, you'll never lose track again. Providing total visibility and simple troubleshooting, Pulseway allows you to take control of your IT network, all whilst looking great with their user-friendly UI. Meaning the only thing you'll get caught up in are cables. Try it free today using my link in the video description. So the case we're using for today's build is the Antec Performance 1 case. This is one of their newer cases they've just released, so we're very interested and excited to build a system inside of it. Now the radiator bracket has toolless removal, which will come in super handy and easy for us to install our radiator. There's also a couple of cable management trays at the back side of the case, which is fantastic because we all love clean builds. On the front of the case is a little temperature display, which is absolutely fantastic because you can monitor your CPU's temperature while the PC is running at all times. Now this does say it's a full tower, but I would say that it is quite a small full tower. And you'll see why when we put the GPU in. Look at that front there, that actually matches the backplate really well. It's also got the three 140mm fans installed at the front and a 120 installed in the rear. Unfortunately, not RGB, so we will be swapping those out. All right, time to get the case prepped. First things first, we're gonna remove all of the fans. To make things easier for us throughout the build process, I'm going to go ahead and remove this cable management hiding tray. I'm also going to remove the hard drive cage down below, which we are not going to be using because we have two SATA SSDs that I want to mount somewhere else. And on the bottom, we will remove our fan filters right there, and on the top as well, because we are going to need the top to install our radiator. Today's build, we're going to be going all AMD, and we have the ASRock X670E Tai Chi motherboard. This is DDR5 compatible. It is an all black design with some minor bronzing to some of the aesthetics, which I think is going to look really nice in this system. We also have plenty of M.2 storage, Wi-Fi 6E, and USB 4 Type-C, which is going to be absolutely incredible. Another awesome design feature about this is we're actually going to be able to use our graphics card this time because there's going to be plenty of room to utilize our custom backplate, which we have installed. For our CPU, this is the only AMD Ryzen 7000 series CPU that we have on hand, so we're going with the 7900X. This is a 12-core, 24-thread CPU with a boost clock of up to 5.6 gigahertz. It's going to be plenty for this build, so we cannot wait to get it installed. To install our CPU, it is important to note where the triangle is on the protective capping and on the CPU. That is how you're going to know the right orientation to install your CPU. Simply lift up the latch and then lift this protective capping up like so. This is the point where we line up the triangles. You can see the triangle on the top left-hand corner of the CPU and the triangle on the top left-hand corner of the motherboard. Now you don't have to force the CPU in, there's only one way it will go in. It has small notches on the top and the bottom, which it'll just slip into. After that, you can put the protective capping down, you can bring the handle down and lock it in place, and that will automatically remove and pop off this protective capping. Make sure you keep this because you're gonna need it for warranties and returns. This is the only CPU block that we own, which is the EK Quantum Velocity 2 for AM5 sockets. This is a nickel-plated plexi copper CPU water block, which is good because we do like seeing the liquid flowing throughout the system, and we are going to be water cooling just the CPU. As I said, the GPU, it's a limited edition GPU, so it doesn't make sense to water block it, and we want to see how it performs with its stock heatsink on. To install our water block, we're going to need to remove all 4 of these screws. We're also going to need a small amount of thermal paste right in the middle of the CPU, and the pressure of the water block being installed will actually spread this thermal paste nice and evenly. The CPU block can be installed now, but remember to remove the protective film. This AM5 block is actually tightened up from the back side, and it uses the pre-installed bracket which comes with the motherboard. For our RAM, we're going to go with the Trident Z5 RGB RAM. This is from G.Skill. It is a 32GB set, 2 sticks, running at CL40 timings, 5600 MHz, which is going to be plenty for this system. We can also try and overclock these. After all, Ryzen does appreciate higher speed memory. DDR5 at the moment is still very finicky, so it works best with only 2 sticks of RAM in both slots A2 and B2. Now to install the RAM, all you have to do is line up the notch with the notch in the RAM slot, put the RAM stick in, push down on one side and then the other. You may have to use a bit of firmness to actually get it down. You're not going to break it. Obviously don't go overboard, and just make sure that the notches line up. Installation of the motherboard is pretty standard across the line. All I would say is if you have an older motherboard, you may not have the IO shield pre-installed, and that will come in the motherboard box and you would have to apply it to here before installing the motherboard. Now, the other thing to look out for is the case's motherboard compatibility. You want to make sure that your case can support an ATX or an eATX or an ITX motherboard depending on what you're after. Now, I also like to start by screwing in the screws at opposite corners just to make sure that the motherboard is set in place before screwing in the rest. So I've done the bottom left and I will do opposite at the top right just to make sure that it's sitting in place properly. Now that it's set in place, I'm free to go around and screw in whichever ones I want. I'm excited to be using these fans. We haven't used them before. These are the Fusion 120 ARGB fans from Antec. Cool thing about these is they have a dual layer diffusion over the LEDs. There are 16 LEDs in total on each fan. So yeah, it's diffused a lot better because the materials that are used as the dual layer, they're different materials as well. And this further adds to the diffusion so you don't see hot spots. Well, that's the theory behind it. Now these fans, they do have a silent operation design, and they've also got the vibration pads on each corner, and they actually feel pretty hefty and premium. I like that about them. So the plan here is to mount the reservoir at the front because we're going to be using the long Red Devil GPU. We have no room for fans at the front, which means we're bringing cool air in from the bottom and bringing it up and flowing out the top. What this means is this fan needs to go in upside down. Fortunately, we have no RGB rings on this side of the fan. So to combat that, we've actually got Antec's older Prism P120 fans, and they've actually got LED rings on both sides. So we could use the P120 fans down the bottom to bring the air in and still have access to that RGB lighting and still provide some decent airflow. The only other thing I've noticed is in the screw kit, there are not screws included for screwing in 3 fans down the bottom to the power supply shroud. I wish they were included, but they're not. So I'm gonna have to look through my fan screws to see if we've got enough to join these onto the case. So if we're gonna be utilizing the front of the build for our pump res combo, then all we have left really is 360mm of radiator space up the top. 360mm, it's gonna be plenty for our system just to cool the CPU, the 7900X. And we've got EK's brand new surface radiator. What's this? This is the S360, so it's one of the thinner ones. So I've pre-installed the CPU power cables because, as you guys know, or may have experienced before, when you go to install your radiator, it's almost impossible to plug the CPU power cables in once it's installed. So let's go ahead and get this inside the case and see what room we have to work with. Yeah, so just as I thought, it would have been a struggle to install the power cables if I had installed this first. It actually looks like Antec has also provided enough room up the top for a 360 radiator to also fit in the fan at the rear here. A lot of the times we've struggled to fit in a fan at the rear because we have the tubes coming down and they hit that fan space, so we've had to leave that fan out, but we're able to fit it. Also, one other thing I've noticed is where the I/O is here on the motherboard. Usually with a lot of cases, we have tubes coming out of the radiator straight down and it hits the I/O on the motherboard. That's not the case here. We've been provided with plenty of room from Antec, so that's an absolutely fantastic job. Let's get this installed. So I'm a little stuck here in what I want to achieve for the build. Once the graphics card goes in the case, there's not a lot of room to install fans at the front, plus have a reservoir. So what I am hoping to do is have the graphics card in, fans down the bottom, bringing fresh air in, and then fans up the top, taking all of the hot air out. And so what that leaves us with is space at the front to mount this EK FLT D5 pump res combo. In theory, I'm hoping that will work and we have plenty of room, but graphics cards these days, they're getting just too big, so it's not leaving us with a lot of options. And of course, we don't want to block the limited edition Red Devil graphics card that while we get a limited edition graphics card in the first place. And guys, this is why I've titled the video like I have. I've got the GPU not installed, but it's sitting in the case. And you know, I thought we had come up with a brilliant solution to actually fit some water cooling in there. I mean, say you just want to water cool your CPU and you're waiting for your GPU block to arrive. It's so hard nowadays with most cases to actually achieve that because you can't fit a reservoir in unless I was to put like a smaller 120 or 80mm reservoir up here or up here and make it look janky. So I've gone in to try and fit the D5 pump res combo, and there's not going to be any room to install any 90-degree fittings to bring the tubes up. Imagine if you had GeForce card, an RTX 4080, 4090. it's actually longer than the Red Devil, so you have less options there. The only solution I can really come up with at this present moment in time is we put the 80mm DDC in first so that it sits down below, and now I can just like ever so slightly fit the 90-degree fittings on and bring the water cooling tubes up. Now this is considered a full tower case, so you can imagine how many cases really can't fit what this case can. I remember back in the days where I had a full-length graphics card installed and I was able to fit 2 reservoirs side by side. It's honestly a bit disheartening for the water cooling community, water cooling enthusiasts, but we'll always find a way to get it done, and so it's time to progress on with the build. But for any of you guys who are feeling how I am about the size of graphics cards and the impact that it has on fitting other things into the build, it may not even be water cooling, leave your comments down below of similar experiences that you guys have had. So for today's system, we have the Powercolor Red Devil 7900 XTX limited edition graphics card. You may have seen this a few days ago in one of our previous builds. Unfortunately, we weren't able to use the custom backplates that were designed for this particular graphics card, but we get to use them today. Now this graphics card actually does come with integrated RGB lighting and a reinforced metal backplate already built into it. And the way that these other backplates attach is with small magnets which simply attach to the back. It only requires 2 8-pins to power this graphics card. And for the I/O on the back, we've got HDMI and 3 display ports. For those of you who are interested, there is also a dual BIOS switch on the top here. Now for the 2 backplates, we have this more sleek design, and you can see that they've left these slits here, this little grill part there, so that there is plenty of lighting showing through there. The Red Devil logo can shine through there and you can still see it. Now the one that I'm interested in is actually this design right here, and I plan on carrying this design out throughout the whole case. So it simply just clips on like so, nice and easy into place. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, let's forget about water cooling for a second. If you were in the market and you just upgraded your GPU, there is a high chance, a high probability that a lot of you guys out there have had to upgrade your case just to fit the GPU in. This is the Antec Signature titanium rated 1000 watt power supply. Titanium rated, that is absolutely incredible. Not only that, but it's also a sleek, minimalistic design, which I think will look really nice in this system. I love that it's not overboard with too much RGB, and it's got this awesome signature little panel or logo there. Looks really nice and sleek. It also features a hybrid mode on the back, so whenever your system is running, if it doesn't reach a certain temperature, the fan doesn't need to spin. The last piece of the puzzle, the power supply. So we're gonna make sure that we install this with the fan facing down to bring in some nice, cool, fresh air. I mean, we don't want the power supply choking up, and it's good that we're going to have titanium efficiency 1000 watts installed. The only issue I have with it is that we're not gonna be able to see the beauty of the power supply. It's got a lovely badge on the front there, which I really love. Looks super clean, but there's no window there in the power supply shroud. It's not too much of an issue, it's just personal preference. Now we've made a bunch more room down the bottom as well by removing the hard drive cage tray, because we're not going to be using any hard drives. So we've got plenty of room for cables down below as well. Not only that, but by removing the hard drive cage, we also have freed up a lot more room for the airflow from the fans. A little bit of sag here on the GPU, so I might actually go ahead and install this support bracket at the back of the GPU. So for the storage, we're actually going away from your traditional NVMe drives because we want to add some bling to the system, and the T-Force Delta Max RGBs are going to allow us to do just that. I want to put these on display somewhere in the build, and the whole surface of this little SATA drive right here can be RGB. It can be any color you want. So I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe red to match the Red Devil. We'll see when we come up to that point. It's such a shame that such a nice SSD is going to be hidden in the build at the back. I feel like these would have been really cool to be viewable, but unfortunately, unless we do something super custom, which I don't even think we have any room to do, there's no room to mount these anywhere at, like, say, the top of the power supply shroud because we've got fans or anywhere else. So these will be at the back, but we'll make sure to show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking with the tube loop. We obviously have our 80 FLT DDC pump res combo there. Then we've got our FLT 240 above. The FLT 240 is essentially going to act as kind of like a filling insert for the pump res combo down here. I don't have any other tubes attaching to it, so if we fill this up, it'll pretty much just keep feeding the 80mm DDC pump res combo down below. Now from there, we have the liquid which comes out of this tube straight into the CPU inlet over here. Then it comes out straight into the radiator, out of the radiator and back down into the 80mm DDC pump res combo. So we should never run dry in this because there is going to be a constant feed of liquid, and we could just top this up the top there whenever it gets a bit lower, but it should be fine. Point 3 for a full loop, boys. Looks like she won't be leaking anytime soon. So for customization, guys, I'm going to bring more of the backplate into the design of the whole build, and we're going to do this by creating custom panels. Now this is a 2-layer design, so we've got the red at the bottom and then the black on the top. We've gone ahead and we've created the files. Now we're ready to do the laser cutting over here, and we're just going to be using acrylic, and then we'll give it a paint job. Let's get into it. We also just got our first coat on these with this metallic cast anodized surface color. So I actually spray painted these black first, and then I put a kind of metallic cover over the top just so that this would stand out a bit more. Now it is going to need another coat. There are sections where it's not quite covered real well and it is still drying in places. Once I get the next coat on, it's actually going to darken it up and it'll look more like the back plate as well. That's the next step, but while that's drying, let's get into finishing the build. Now guys, if you enjoyed this video so far, make sure you leave a comment down below and like the video. Helps us out a bunch. And another thing you may want to check out is this video over here where one of our subscribers pretty much gets scammed on Facebook Marketplace, but we fixed up that build and surprised him with something really awesome.